Okay. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason.
I thought we could maybe just start by having you give a bit of an introduction to our listeners.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Michelle Frenier. I'm a strategic consultant for NMB Solutions in the area of global trade. I have a customs brokerage license here in the US as well as an export certification. And I've been doing it for a little over 20 years, working with companies from customs brokers to in house compliance as well as software providers such as NMB. So I'm really excited to talk with everyone about AES today.
All right, great. Well, it's great to have you. I'm looking forward to it. So, yeah, you mentioned AES. Can you explain a little bit more about what it is and why it's so crucial for businesses involved in exporting?
Yeah, sure. So AES, first off, stands for Automated Export System. So this is a data gathering mechanism for U.S. export, and it's overseen by Census Bureau, but it's enforced by U.S. Customs, which is kind of interesting, right? So the collection of the data and then who actually enforce it, two different parties. This is where the statistical data is gathered for export by export classification. So this is known as a Schedule B number. They are similar to an HTS number, which is sort of set by the World Customs Organization and harmonized at sort of the 6-digit level. This number helps for anyone to understand what the bigger groups of classifications sort of distill down to. So one of the more important things is that if you fail to file or you make incorrect filings of AES when they're required, this can really subject your business to potential fines, even loss of export privileges, which is we're seeing quite a bit of this out in the ether as the changing global environment, as you know, it's quite intense today.
All right, so really critical for any business doing any amount really of export of goods out of the U.S. and it involves, I guess, multiple U.S. agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great point, Jason. They are all sharing data these days. The automated commercial environment, or ACE, which most folks are familiar with, allows these agencies to sort of share data and understand the connections to all exports going everywhere. So, this really is the eye in the sky and why it's so critical that the data is captured correctly for your company, because that's what these agencies are able to look at in case of audits, for instance.
All right. What are some of the key regulations and compliance issues that companies should be aware of when filing AES?
Yeah, this one's a good one. Most companies, I feel like I am hearing more and more people say, "Oh, I have an expert broker or forwarder. The responsibility is really theirs," right? And this is just not the case. It is ultimately the U.S. principal party of interest. We might have heard the term USPPI. It's their responsibility to ensure that their goods are properly classified. Assigning that proper Schedule B number, but also making sure that they have an ECCN number, an export classification if it's required, and that this information is declared appropriately. This includes maintaining correct details. So as your shipment changes, things like port of export, export date, all of these things need to be up to date within the system. Working with a customs broker or forwarder for exports is great if you're filling out the SLI, shipper's letter of instruction. But what happens when those details change? How quickly are you able to get with that partner to make a correction? How do you monitor what's going on with your ACE filings? Because essentially they all go through the ACE system. Um, how do you know that everything is correct and that you don't need an update? Because that's really going to come back on you as the U.S. principal party of interest to be responsible for that.
All right, so plenty of challenges that you've described there. What are some of the common mistakes that businesses make when filing export data in AES, and how can they avoid it?
Yeah, so companies without in house trade professionals, I find, fail often to properly check how their goods are classified and how they might be subject to the Export Administration regulations, which is called the EAR. This includes, reviewing Commerce Control List, which is where all of the ECCN numbers as export classifications are held, as well as when their goods are subject to or allowed to be under EAR 99, which means it's not controlled. So proper identification really ensures that your goods are going to be reported to AES in the correct way, and it prevents sort of those inquiries we talked about from US Customs and Census, based on their error targeting. They're able to tell if something doesn't look right in the data because they are sharing those systems. So that's a really important thing, and I find that many folks are just sort of um, they don't understand. They don't understand that why it's required. They don't understand how to find out. And again, the broker forwarders who are supporting you are really relying on you to know this stuff. So if you don't have in-house trade professionals, this one can be a big challenge. Another common mistake, is failing to screen the parties to the transaction that are reported in AES. So restricted party screening, for instance, is another critical aspect of exporting. It prevents the shipments to barred persons and companies who've been sort of identified by the government as bad actors. This we've seen a lot in the news lately, folks selling to the wrong places, the wrong people. And, having a good restricted party screening system that's embedded in your ERP is most important. And for D365, of course, NMB has that solution available. And if you don't screen parties, there's a real risk of having hefty fines and ultimately loss of export privileges. And not to mention your reputation. We're all seeing it in the news when companies are sort of stunned by this and failing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the consequences when filings are incorrect or incomplete?
Yeah, audits, they're the worst. One of the most stressful situations I've had in my life, and I'm sure other trade professionals have seen if they've been in the business, is being contacted about an export shipment, right? All you're given is an export date, the internal transaction number, ITN number. This serves as the proof of filing with customs. That's the data elements customs is going to give you. And they're going to say, hey, tell me about this, or ask specific questions. So how you structured your record keeping and systems will determine how swiftly you're going to be able to research and deliver these requested details when you get an audit request. Best practice is to utilize data directly from your operating system, right? A single record that compiles all of your information and sends it off to AES. This is the best data. It ensures linkage back to your sales order and ultimately part level data. And this is where you store your export classification and information directly within D365. So with NMB, we've got this native AES filing that gives you the advanced level of visibility that's not contained in the ACE environment or when a broker and forwarder uses your system. We have the benefit of having all your data. And when you get these requests, you're able to retrieve that information and really understand the whole transaction within minutes, not maybe days, weeks, or months. And I'm not exaggerating. Sometimes it takes a while to get a partner to report back the information that might have been submitted to
So
customs.
some of those concerns and demands sound familiar to me. I'm certainly not a trade expert, but having essentially thinking of D365 as that sort of source of truth, right? That you can call upon if you are questioned, right? Or if those requests do come back to you from the authorities. Is that kind of the idea there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that ITN number is stored right within D365, which is your record that you filed. So you're able to quickly search within the system the date, the ITN number, and it pulls up all of the back information, all the way through the sales orders that were part of that shipment, back to the item level data. And you can really drill into what customs might be asking about, right? Because they're the enforcement arm for this transaction. Census is gathering it, but customs is asking questions, so you should treat them just like a customs inquiry and make sure that you really understand the backstory to the filing, not just, hey, this is what you want to know. You really want to be able to dig in before you
All right. I want
answer.
to know more about what different countries require in terms of specific information in AES filings. How do businesses handle these variations?
Yeah, so one more recent thing that's changed in exports has been the addition of filing for anything that has an ECICN number. If it's going to China, Hong Kong, which they consider one region, Russia, or Venezuela, regardless of value, these shipments require an export filing and electronic export information, so EEI, which is the transmission that happens in AES. Came effective just back in June of 2020. So companies may not even understand that they have to do this. It's one of those things, again, if you don't have an internal trade department, it could be kind of hard to understand, hey, do I have an ECCN number? Have I properly classified my products? Oh, and if I'm shipping to any of these regions, what do I need to do? I find customers tend to really lock on to that $2,500 threshold for AES filing. And if it's under that, they're like, oh, it's not required. Well, this new regulation or newish regulation is holding customers responsible for filing when there is an ECCN number on there. So the ability to set parameters and rules within D365 using NMB's AES solution, we look at the ECCN number, the destination country, and we're able to capture that and let the customer know that they need to file AES regardless of value.
All right. So I did want to sort of change tracks just a bit and focus on D365 itself. How has the technology evolved in recent years to streamline AES filing processes?
Yeah, so NMB is a leading ISV provider for supply chain and compliance solution for Microsoft D365 finance and supply chain. So we're also available on AppSource. So we are certified to provide these services. So specifically, we're streamlining and enhancing compliance screening, packing, shipping operations for companies that operate in D365 FNS via native D365 user experiences. We're integrated, we're purpose built, and we bring enterprise level supply chain logistics and compliance applications to D365. So there are three main reasons that Microsoft SI partners specifically like to work with us and why customers choose to use our solutions over others. Um, First, I would say it's our extensive D365 knowledge and Microsoft credibility, especially since these solutions are all certified and on AppSource. Second, I would say that the equally deep domain knowledge in supply chain execution and fulfillment. A number of us from NMB work in supply chain and compliance and operations, and also have supply chain software backgrounds. Lastly, there's risk mitigation. This is a standard solution which can work off the shelf, but is also configurable to meet the needs of our customers. We manage, maintain, and support all the integrations, the modules themselves. This means the partners that we work with don't have to do that. And we stay in sync with Microsoft versions. So there isn't a time when the solution is just suddenly unusable, which is really important. We've made these strides to increase the ability and accessibility of compliance within D365, a solution that is not readily available out there in the ether. So businesses and supply chains generally evolve more quickly than applications that are in place to take care of them. So we are flexible and modular, which means businesses can adopt and integrate these new technologies into their process much more quickly and at a lesser cost. And it gives them access to tools like Copilot Studio and its AI and orchestration capabilities. So NMB partners and the best of breed providers. I'd like to talk a little bit about AEB. They are a certified compliance offering within D365. Um, we bring in AEB's expertise with US Customs into D365 using master data. So that data integrity we talked about, that error-free submission to US Customs, is enabled through our partnership with AEB, who's certified with Customs. You don't have to go out to AEB. You can. We have access to their portal and ability to do that. But we pride ourselves on those native screens that you're used to, right? That deep integration, native D365 screens, and sort of instant user familiarity. And that makes NMB's partner with AEB to offer these AAS filings direct the sort of the only offering that compliance programs can have if they're looking for this level of execution and compliance directly within D365.
All right, great. So AEB is certified already with US Customs. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that really means?
Yeah, sure. So NMB's Gateway for Parcel automates and tracks sales order data through the packing process. So that's how we enable item level classifications, consignee, Schedule B codes that are required in an AES filing to come to the forefront where we're able to submit that to AEB. So since NMB is fully integrated with AEB, and they're a government licensed and regulated export compliance platform. We ensure that their access to compliance data coming from native D365 transmits over to customs in sort of a mirrored record instead of having the issues of having data entry errors that you might have by having that transmitted either manually into the A system or through a broker and having sort of the information fat fingered going into to customs. So because this embedded AES functionality is in D365 and connected to AEB, who has that connection with the government, it's no drama on our side to exchange data. AEB has that connection. We bring them exactly what they need, and all of the information travels back from AEB's portal out to customs and back to D365 with that ITN number so that you have it right within your orders so you can see it at that order level, item level, etc. So this embedded functionality is not only a best practice, but it increased system confidence and user adoption because your team does not need to learn a separate system. They don't need to worry about, hey, where do I go to monitor that? All of that comes back into D365 where they already have that familiarity with the screens. So lastly, there's risk management and audit preparation that's also centralized in D365 because the information's native. You get your ITN number and you're able to come right back into your screens and see all the details of your orders, quickly responding to any audits that might come up, looking for maybe a systemic issue that you want to drill into. You have all the robust reporting capabilities of Microsoft along with that data from customs. So it's a piece where AEB enables that information to be native in your system through the NMB workbench.
Yeah, you're taking away that sort of I want to say nightmare scenario with that kind of the potential for really difficult and painful audits if you didn't have that kind of level of traceability and interconnectivity between those between the systems that make up that process.
Absolutely. If you're looking for that stuff manually, you're really going to be pulling your hair out. It's difficult because of the sort of siloed systems that happen when you have to use customs or a third party to hold that data, and then you're you're responsible for making the information come out. But you have so many players. This way, you don't have any extra players. It's your team. It's your native system. It makes it much easier. A non-event.
All right, excellent. Well, yeah, it's always great to get a little bit of a look inside the thinking behind some of these really important types of integrations and how they came to be and what they really can provide. If listeners have other questions, can they reach out to you or to the NMB team to learn more?
Yeah, sure. I think the best bet would be to come and see our minty new website, all
That's
rebranded.
right.
That's www.nmbsolutions.ca. That's where you're going to find more information on these topics, white papers, case studies, information that you might be looking, as well as several ways to reach out to the team and learn about how our offerings can sort of level up your existing platform.
All right, excellent. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. The rebrand does look great. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add, Michelle?
I don't think so, Jason. I think we've covered enough scary topics for these folks today. I really thank you for your time. It's been great to share sort of the unique ways that NMB together with AEB provides a compliance execution for D365 partners and customers. Um, it's a best practice, and I love to be part of helping sort of demystify how it all works and kind of bring that shiny light on the fact that native D365, no silos, just clarity and compliance. It's really a beautiful thing. So glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing it.